much. I'm so happy to be invited today. It sounds like you're having an awesome day. I am a broker associate. I'm based in Fort Myers, Florida. I sell about 100 properties a year. I'm one of Gary's top 100 for individual agents. I'm also an investor in the Fort Myers Market Center. And I am a personal investor. I have a portfolio that includes Airbnb, VRBO type properties, as well as annual rentals. And I do a little bit of flipping as well. So I'm really here today to talk about my experience, and so glad that I can share with everyone. And I do hope people have questions that sort of makes the time go by and makes it a little bit more meaningful for everybody.
I think they're all just in food comas right now as they are coming back, but I think we'll get a little more participation as we go. They've been pretty good so far. All right, so you wanted to go ahead and share your presentation, so feel free to do so, and I will get out of your way. If you need anything, I will be right here with you, though.
Okay. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, you can see my screen. Okay, so Ryan asked me to come here today to talk about investing your way to retirement. And this is really a subset of a class I teach for Florida Educational Services, FES, which is called Take Hold of Your Financial Future. And it's also called the MREI, which is Millionaire Real Estate Investor. And that's a book that was co-authored by Gary. And it really talks about the steps to thinking a million, buying a million, and then, netting a million in basically mailbox money. So it's a great book if you haven't read it. And today I'm just going to do a shortened version of it. We won't be able to get into all the nuts and bolts, but hopefully it'll give you a good flavor of what the class is about. And you'll come back to one of my other classes. I teach it as a 3-hour Zoom and also as an all-day in-class experience. So I've already talked a little bit about myself. I'm really delighted to be here. And if I can ever help with referrals on this coast, please reach out. I work with a lot of agents and their investors and buyers and sellers. So we're talking about retirement in this class. And by retirement, we don't necessarily mean, when you're ready to take Social Security. We really mean having the passive income you need to live your life by design. And that could be at 30, that you want to say, I want to have so much money where I don't have to work, but I can work just because I like to. So, or it could be at 60 or 80, but this is planning for your retirement, or really what we mean again is just having that mailbox money, having that money come to you every month so that you can fulfill your dreams, whether that's traveling the world, paying for your kids' college or your grandkids' college, setting up an orphanage in a different country or whatever. So that's really what we're talking about today, and that should be the mindset for today. A lot of people, though, when you ask them, well, how much money do you need? And are you on track to meet these goals? Most people really don't know if they are or not, or really what they even need. So that's what we're really talking about today, is getting a bit more clarity on that process. So let's start by looking at a few people here. Now, the first gentleman would like $100,000 a year when he retires, and that's that number on top of his head. He started saving $100 a month at age 20. Based on the numbers, it's going to take him 64 years before he has built up enough savings so that he can get $100,000 a month in passive income. So he'll be able to retire at 84. The woman in the middle, she would like $200,000 a year when she retires. She started saving $500 a month at age 30. It's going to take her 52 more years to achieve that goal. So she'll be able to retire at age 82. And this man would like $80,000 a year when he retires. He started saving $2,000 a month, a little bit later than the others. It will take him 25 years to achieve that goal. So he can retire at age 65, but he's got a lot of saving to do between then and now. So the reason we're bringing this up is we're saying it's really difficult to invest or to save your way to retirement. So a better model is to keep saving. We want you to keep saving money, but also consider investing in real estate, having a portfolio of real estate. And now we help our clients often to do this, but maybe we should walk that back a bit and actually help ourselves to do this. Here's one example of someone that's been very successful. And a lot of you may have heard of Linda McKissick. She's very well known in KW in terms of she is a big profit share earner every year. But before all that, when she was just an agent in 1991, she was about $600,000 in debt. And then 12 years later, she has a net worth of over $10 million. So how did she do that? She and her husband, Jimmy. Well, they partnered with their builder. They located property. He put up the money. He did the repairs, but their contribution was funding the property and kicking in their commission. They were able to flip this property for $15,000 profit. And I know Adrian this morning, he's great at flipping property. He spoke to you guys a lot about how if you want to gain short-term income, flipping property can be very beneficial. So they flipped some properties, they kept investing that profit in other deals. However, at some point, they started to hold these properties. And so fast forward 13 years later, you can see the portfolio of properties that they had. And so again, hopefully you feel like, well, if they can do it in 12 or 13 years, be so far in debt, and then fast forward have a net worth of 10 million, then that's something that you can do too. Now, there are different ways to invest your money. So, property investment is what I'm here to talk to you about today. You could also look at stocks, mutual funds, money market. Chances are, as you go through life, you'll end up investing in all of these areas. The nice thing about property, though, is that it's leverageable. In other words, if I want to invest $100,000 in property, I only need $20,000 to $25,000 to do it. Unlike in stocks and mutual funds and money market, I need $100,000 in order to invest it in those areas. So that's the beauty of stocks. So of property. So the beauty is if you had $100,000 to invest and you only had to put $20,000 into each property, you could buy $500,000 in investment property. Everyone with me so far? Any questions? No, I'm going to keep on trekking them. So that's one reason why investing in property is so nice, because you can leverage it. Another reason is because of what we call equity buildup. When you first buy the property, it would look something like on the far left-hand side here. You put down, let's say it's a $100,000 property. You put down $25,000, that would be your investment. The debt would be $75,000. Maybe you bought it a little bit under market, so maybe there's some equity there, but probably not much. But over time, as the property appreciates, you build up equity. Okay, so the property that was worth 100,000 then is 125, and then 140, and then 200, and it keeps going. So you're building up equity. Now, while you're building up equity, you're also paying down the debt. And the reality is you're not paying it down, your renters are paying it down. So you're building up equity and you're paying off your debt until you have no more debt left on that property. And the nice thing about that equity is you can actually borrow against it if you need to buy other properties. So that's one of the powers of having property in your portfolio. Another one is cash flow, or what we call mailbox money. This is the money that's coming to your mailbox or being deposited into your bank account pretty much while you sleep. So what does that really look at? Well, if you look at the property all the way on the left, that's when we first buy the property. So you have debt to service and you have expenses like, the mowing the grass, if it's in an HOA or a condo, maybe fixing up the roof or redoing the kitchen. So you have some expenses with a property. So in the early days, you have, you're getting some income. That would be in the yellow, but you have to subtract out your expenses and your debt. So your cash flow in the early days could be $0 or $100 a year, or if you're lucky, maybe $10,000 or $20,000 a year. But over time, rents continue to go up. I know you would think right now, if you look at rents, they're definitely going up. And the debt is being paid off by your renter. So your cash flow is going to increase as your rent goes up and your debt goes down. You end up with cash flow. So at some point, you have a property that's paid off, your expenses are fairly stable, it's rented, and then you're getting a lot of cash flow every year. And that's really going to help you then to retire, to do those dreams, whatever your retirement dreams are. So that's the beauty of property investment. It's growing through appreciation, and also the cash flow is growing as well. Any questions on that? So that's really the premise behind the millionaire real estate investor, or building wealth through real estate. Now, when I teach this as a 3-hour or an all-day class, we go through all these different steps for building wealth. Today, we're really just going to focus on a few of the more critical ones. And the first one is establishing your why. So the first thing you really need to understand is, what is that financial freedom number? What's that number that allows you to not have to work? When you add up your expenses and then your dreams, and then what is that number? What is that yearly number? So you really should give some clarity to what that number is. So that would be step number one, is really getting some clarity around their financial freedom number. And again, that should align with whatever your life by design is. Now here, let's go back to Jimmy and Linda. Their financial freedom number was $240,000 a year in passive income. Okay, so they sat down, they were like, what do we really need to live on each year? What do we need coming in that'll pay all of our bills, plus allow us to do the things we wanted to do? And for them, that was $240,000 a year. So what was their plan for doing that? Well, okay, they were going to quit work in 20 years. So they needed to have this $240,000 by year 20. And that came out to $20,000 a month in passive income. If you take the 240 divided by 12, that's $20,000 a month. So how were they going to do this? They decided that their achievement strategy was to buy 20 single-family rentals. Each one would generate $1,000 in cash flow a month. So that's their $20,000 a month. They needed to complete all those purchases within the first 5 years. So they basically needed to buy 4 properties a year. And they financed them on a 15-year note. So that way, by the time they got to year 20, everything was paid off. Okay, and then finally, they needed to put at least 20% down. So that was their achievement strategy. And you can come up with your own. So once you know your big why, what's that financial freedom number for your why, you can then come up with your own achievement strategy for doing that. And as Gary says, you know, ink makes you think. So it's great to write this down, write down what your financial freedom number is, and write down your strategy to getting there. So the next part, you're probably saying, well, that's all well and good, but how do I actually get the money to do all this? So the next step is really to budget like a millionaire. And I believe you talked a little bit this morning about the path of money. So I'm just going to quickly go through it again. You get a $5,000 commission check. Do you spend it, save it, invest it, or donate it? Well, a lot of people spend it. And that sort of stops them from really progressing with their achievement strategy, because we need to have some money in order to buy these properties. So this is what Gary would recommend in terms of budgeting and working those financially wealthy habits into your daily life. So up here at the top, we're showing income in, and it's $5,000, let's say a $5,000 commission. And then in the middle, it's cash, and we spend it and we consume it. So that's it. So the dark black line, we have income coming in, we spend it, we consume it, and that's the end of the line. A better model looks like this. We have income that comes in and we invest it, and that's down at the bottom. We invest that money, and that money gives us a cash flow. And then that cash flow money that comes in, we can add into investment money and continue to buy that way. So what we want to do is, rather than spend everything, we need to budget so that we have money that we can now invest. And once we start investing, the cash flow that comes off of those investments, we want to reinvest. So it's okay. I mean, obviously we all consume, but really to get financially wealthy, sometimes you need to take a step back from consumption, really look at what you need and see if you can, have a little bit more discipline now in order to give you that life by design later. Okay, so it does take some discipline. When we look at money, we have to really understand our budget. And we all have required expenses like, a rent or a mortgage, and maybe a car payment, maybe student loans, utilities, food. So we have required expenses, but we also have discretionary. That's the fun money, the travel money, maybe buying some expensive watches, going on trips. So that's your discretionary money. So we really need to take a good look at our budget. And the beauty of this is that there are a lot of online programs that you can get that might even be attached to your credit cards or your bank statements that will really help you to look and examine your budget. Some of the things you might want to consider doing is really figure out where your income is going each month. And just like we play red light, green light with our businesses, our real estate businesses, we should really be looking and playing red light, green light with our personal expenses as well, especially these days where, inflation is going up. It's really a good time to take a look at what are you spending money on each month, and, really what is not necessary. And then really clarify what is required and what is discretionary. And you may even want to set up different accounts for, discretionary income versus required income. What a lot of millionaire agents and real investors do is they have a separate savings account where they put money in first. They pay themselves. They put that money aside before they even spend money on anything else, so that they will have money later on to invest. A few more tips that we talk about in the class. How do you reduce your expenses? How can you increase your income? Now, we are fortunate to work for Keller Williams, where we learn how to run our real estate as a business, and how to really understand our numbers and lead generate and look for actually improving that. I know when I came to KW about 6 years ago, I was about an $8 million agent. And after reading the MREA book a whole bunch of times and sitting in on tons of training, I'm now doing 30 to 40 million a year. And that's all, thanks to really understanding those systems and models that are provided by KW. So I would really encourage everyone, keep on reading that book, get to the business planning. The more you can do to increase your business, then the more funds you will have to then invest in property. And automatically deduct 15% from your income for investing. And again, look at separating up a separate investment account. Dave Ramsey has some great books and videos, and he's on Facebook really talking about the money makeover. So if you need help in this area, there are a lot of resources out there. Also, Gary Keller's podcast, Think Like a CEO, he goes over a lot of this as well. So once we have a handle on our budget, we really want to understand, well, what is our net worth? And that's really how millionaire real estate investors keep track of how they're doing. So the first thing is understanding, well, what do we mean by net worth? And what assets are included in net worth? And typically it's the ones that are in green. So your 401k, vacation home, your primary residence, your savings account, typically cars, furnitures, things like that really don't appreciate. So we don't really consider those in our net worth unless you really have something special in one of those categories. So let's take a look at how net worth evolves over time. The first way net worth evolves is through owning your own home. So even before you look to invest in real estate, you really should make sure that you do own your own home. And the government does census reports every few years on net worth. And as you can see, at different points in time, the net worth of a homeowner is significantly higher than that of a renter. In fact, over time, the net worth of a renter has pretty much remained flat. It's about $5,000, $5,000. However, net worth of a homeowner, keeps increasing. And again, that's because of the power of the appreciation of that asset. Now, if you want to own your first home and invest at the same time, you could look at buying a duplex, living in one side and renting the other side out. And you can talk to your lender about what money from the rental side can be used to help you qualify for that type of a situation. So let's look at net worth in a bit more detail here. So in this situation, basically net worth is what we own minus what we owe, our debt. So in this case, this person owns a home, a car, and a 401k. And they have a mortgage on the home, they have a loan on the car, and they have student debt. So they own about $226,000, but they have debt of about $223,000. So their net worth is $3,000. Okay, that 226 minus 223. Does everybody see that? Okay. So let's fast forward 10 years later. Now this person, their home is appreciated, their car has depreciated, their 401k has gone up, and they bought a property. They bought one property for $150,000. On the on the debt side, they've been paying off a little bit of their mortgage, their car they paid off, they've paid off some of their student loans, but they do have a mortgage on that first investment property. So their net worth has gone up to $136,000. They own 431 minus the 295, and that's their net worth. However, what about this? In 10 years, if they had followed more the Linda and Jimmy McKissick model, and they had not only property number 1, but they bought properties 2 through 5. Well, now they own $1 million in assets, just over $1 million. They owe $795,000 in debt. And remember, a lot of that debt, that $500,000 plus the $125,000, that's being paid off by their renter. So they're not really, paying that, their renter is. So their net worth is now $236,000. And then let's fast forward 20 years later, their home's gone up, their property, these rental properties have gone up. They've paid off all their mortgages. So now their net worth is $1.5 million. So that's how we increase our net worth, through owning property. Any questions on that? Okay, so just to summarize them, where we're at so far, figuring out really where, what should you do first? Well, if you don't own a home, or you have little or no money to invest, you really need to buy your own home. That's really should be step number 1. If you have some money to invest, but you're looking to raise cash, then your strategy is probably to look for properties that you can flip. However, if you have money to invest and you're really looking at wanting to build your own financial wealth, then the strategy is to buy properties and hold them. So that then moves us on to more of the details of the language of real estate. And in our class, we talk about some of the basic terms that you should know. And it sounds like you discussed some of these this morning, like cap rate and ROI. These are good to know not only if you are investing, but also if you're working with investors. So some of the numbers that we look at, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but like the 1% rule. What that says is when you're quickly looking at properties that potentially you could invest in, you want to look at what they're being sold for, what you could buy them for, and then look at about 1% of that, and would you get that type of rent? So we're looking for properties that are yielding whatever we're paying for them, that the rent is going to be about 1% of that value. So if it's a $100,000 property, that you're getting rent of about $1,000 a month. So that's the 1% rule. And that's just a quick way to look at different properties that you might want to analyze further. Now, in my market, it's more like a 0.08% rule. It's really not a 1% rule. It's a little bit less. So if I was buying a property for $100,000, I'd be looking for a rent of about $800 a month. Every market's a little bit different, but that's just a quick rule of thumb. The next one would be the return on investment, the ROI. So that's really, we're looking at the cash flow. So the cash it's making every year divided by the cash that you invested. So it's really the amount of money you can make in 1 year by the amount of money you initially invested. So that's what the cash flow is. So, and the ROI. So those are some of the numbers that we look at in detail when you take the longer class. So here's just one example of ROI. So if you have a yearly profit of $500, so after, all your expenses, so your income minus your expenses, minus your debt, and if that's about $500, and you invested $10,000 in the property, then your ROI is about 5%. So looking at this equation, if you wanted a higher ROI, there would be two ways to do that. You would either need to find a way to increase that profit every year or lower the amount that you have invested. And this is a fun example that we do in class, and we'll just quickly walk through it. If you had a property that you were buying for $100,000 and you put $20,000 down and another $10,000 into rehabbing it, and your cash flow was $39.07, and that is basically taking the rental income and subtracting out all these expenses. That's what's coming into your mailbox is $39.07. Then what is the ROI? And the way we get that ROI is we take the cash flow and we divide it by 30,000, which is the down payment plus the rehab. And that gives us an ROI of 13%, which is not a bad ROI. And then if you were in my class, and when you come to my class, we'll talk about, well, what does that mean for the 1% rule? What's the net operating income? And what is the cap rate? So those are all things that we would be talking about in the class. So moving along, you also need to determine, what do you want to invest in? What's your criteria? And that can change over time, but sometimes it's good to start with a certain class of property and get over a learning curve. Maybe buy the first one, then maybe buy, if that one worked out well, buy a couple more. And so that you get over that learning curve and really understand that property. And then, later on, maybe move into different types of property. So for example, I started out investing in annual rentals up in Massachusetts. I'm originally from there. You can probably hear that in my accent. I still own an annual rental up there. At some point, I started investing down here in short-term beachfront condos that I VRBO'd or Airbnb. And now I have also branched off. I have annual rentals in the area. So, but I really, for a long time, my real focus was on beachfront and buying several of those because it was a property or, an investment strategy that I really understood. I learned a lot on the first one, and then that helped me with the subsequent ones that I bought. So some of the things to consider in your investment criteria: economic, what can you afford to buy? What type of ROIs are you looking for? What's the strategy for buying those? What lending can you get? What type of property? Are you looking for single family, multifamily? And as part of that, are you looking for annual rentals? Are you looking for short-term rentals? Will you manage them, or are you going to have to hire someone to manage them? So those are all the types of things. And that's when I work with an investor, that's what I ask them. Are you looking for short-term, annuals? Who will manage them? Do you want an on-site management company? Are you going to manage them? So those are all the things you need to work out. Location, what's your target neighborhood? Where do you want to buy these properties? Condition, do you want to buy properties that are in good shape, or are you willing to do some, sweat equity in them? And then what features do the properties have to have? Here's the strategy that the McKissicks used. They wanted properties that they could buy and hold. They were looking for, $200 a month in cash flow from each of these, and they were going to be able to put 20% down. They focused on single family. A lot of first-time investors focus on single family, non-HOA communities just because they can have more control over expenses. They were looking in middle-class neighborhoods in Dallas. They wanted little to no sweat equity, and they were looking for brick homes that are 3-bed, 2-bath. Right now, I'm helping my kids to buy property, and we're focused on a certain neighborhood in Fort Myers that's near one of the colleges that we have here, because I feel that having a college, a university, will always help a demand for rentals. And I'm looking for concrete block, just because with the wood homes, typically insurance is higher. And I'm also looking for ones that are on central water and central sewer. A lot of the ones in this particular area are on septic, and I don't really want to deal with 30-year-old septic systems. So that is right now the type of criteria that I'm looking for. And I'm looking for 3-bed, 2-bath minimum. So you need to have your criteria. Now, later at the end of this, I'm going to show you some resources that are through. Yep.
We're getting almost to the stop time, and we've got a couple questions in the chat.
Okay. Oh yeah. Wow, that went fast. Okay.
Really quick. Real quick, Stephanie wants to know, question, she bought a property at 252,000 4 years ago, and now it's valued at 330. They want to put it up for rent. The 0.8% will be 2.640 with a question mark. That will be the price to put it at. I guess they're asking if that's what the price should be at, 2,640 a month.
So what I would say is really go to MLS. What I do is I do a neighborhood search or, whatever that type of property is. I put that through Matrix, and I'm sure your MLS is the same. You can go to rentals and see what people are asking for rentals and what they're currently renting for. So that's what I would be starting with.
Okay.
Does that answer the question, Stephanie?
I think that's a good answer. That's typically what I do. I just like I do comparables for selling a home, I do comparables for rentals.
Right.
All right. And then I've got Miami's training room is asking, when buying a property for short-term rental use like an Airbnb, what type of homeowner insurance do you recommend? Also, if the property is being financed, is there a requirement in terms of said insurance?
Yeah, that's a whole nother animal. Typically, if you come to my one-day class, or even I'm doing a class over in Miami in November, you have to look at how are you going to title the property. Now, our short-term rentals are all in LLCs. And in an LLC, the interest rates, if you're getting a mortgage, will be higher, and the insurance will be higher. So our short-term rentals, they're all in LLCs. We also have liability insurance on our LLCs, and we have an umbrella policy. One thing I talk about in the day class, in the half-day class, is you really have to be surrounded with a good network. You need a good insurance agent. You need a good accountant that can really help you, and a good lender that can really help you put those pieces of the puzzle together. If it's your first property, maybe you'd rather have the lower interest and not put it in an LLC. But these are the things you really need to talk to your lender and your insurance agent about. One of my properties that I helped my son to buy is over in that college area. And I had told several insurance agents we were going to be renting our rooms to college kids. He would live in one room and we would be renting out the others. Oh, no problem. We can handle that. I'm like, well, show that in my policy where you'll accept that, because if the kids burn the house down, I want to make sure I'm covered. And in the end, I could only find really one insurance company that would do that kind of a scenario. So you've really got to be careful.
Very good. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wish we had a little bit more time, but I want to make sure everybody has a chance to run to the bathroom and we have time for the next speaker. Is there anything that you wanted to add to the end of it? Because I know you had a few more slides.
Just come to my class. We go through, in detail, how to analyze properties, to figure out, what the price is, what this was done, while before interest rates went way up, the interest rates, expenses. And the beauty about this, it'll show you the cap rate, the ROI. We go through all these numbers. I have a cheat sheet. But the reason this is investing and not speculating is because you're going to analyze the best case, the worst case. What if you have to put a new roof on? You can throw that in there. So you really have a better understanding. So we're not speculating, we're analyzing and investing in real estate.
Awesome. Denise, would you mind sharing part of your presentation and maybe this sheet with us, and also the date of your class, and we'll make sure we get that out to everybody who attended today?
Will do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if you
Thank you, everybody.